to the new book club series, the Port Haven Book Club. We are beginning our discussion of Star Wars Catalyst. So if you are familiar with our book club series, then you know what I'm about to say. But if you are finding us for the first time through this video, basically what we're going to do is read Catalyst, just a couple of chapters at a time, and really dig into the themes and the happenings. We've done other books like this. We have done the entire Aftermath trilogy, we've done Bloodline, and most recently we've done the book Most Wanted. Now we're here to Catalyst by James Luceno, and this was the novel that led into Rogue One, a Star Wars story. And I'm really excited because this channel kind of came to life after Rogue One came out, so we haven't really gotten to talk a lot about Rogue One on the channel, so this will be a good way to kind of bring in Rogue One a little bit more while discussing a really, really great book. If you are familiar with this series, or you're not familiar with this series of book club videos, this next point will be relevant to you both. This book has parts. There's part 1, for example, where we pick up, but there's also chapter titles. So I think what I'm going to do, it's always good to summarize a little bit of what happened in case you're watching these and not reading along and you've not read the book in a while and you want to refresh your memory or what have you. So I want to do a little bit of summarizing, but I don't want to live in summarizing. So I think what I'll be able to do with this book in particular is I'm just going to kind of go over what happened briefly and what we read. But then when I get into the themes, I'm going to focus it around what part of the book we're in and what the chapter title has to say. Now, of course, there'll be plenty of other things to talk about, and we'll hit some of them, we won't hit others. That's how we're really, I think, how we're going to address it this time around. I'm pretty excited. So we're on to part 1, Life During Wartime, Chapter 1, Pressure. So let's talk about this chapter in the context of life during wartime and also in the context of pressure. So basically, what happened, we open up, it's the Ursos, as we know them, Galen and Lyra, and they're on the science base. They work for some sort of corporation. They're in a place. They're studying crystals that are kind of like lightsaber crystals. I'm actually really interested. I've not read this book since reading Master and Apprentice. And if you are familiar with that book, you'll know that there were some synthetic crystals involved, or at least some off-brand kyber crystals. So it'll be kind of interesting to compare the two, and it might make me revisit Master and Apprentice after this book. But that was basically Galen is working on energy, which is where the whole Death Star thing comes into play. He's working on energy crystals, and you may or may not know that the Death Star is made with kyber crystals, as we're told in Rogue One, which is really exciting to me because that basically means the Death Star is a giant lightsaber gun. You know, the next time you see something happen, just remember, it's a lightsaber gun. But here he's not studying kybers, he's studying kind of an offshoot crystal. They're having a discussion, you get to know, see a little bit of the dynamic of the team. There's this understanding that Lyra is pregnant, which is something I'll get into in a second. And then there's a political coup out of nowhere, and Galen and Lyra are on the run, and then they ultimately end up captured. So that's kind of like the broad strokes of what happens here. But let's get into this. First of all, when it opened up, I always forget just how thirsty the first couple of pages of this book are, and I don't mean for water. The descriptions of Galen and Lyra and how they feel about each other are very much there. They are present. That's really all I have to say about it. It's they're there. But we're getting to know some things about Galen. Galen is this person who, he's a super genius, right? And so he's coming up with parts of the calculations, and he gets lost in his own little world. And Lyra is the only person who can kind of pull him out of that shell and make him talk. And that's something we're going to see a lot more as this novel goes on. This novel is really great if you ever really want to understand Galen and Lyra's marriage. Not that it's shown to be bad or anything in Rogue One, but it's just you're kind of shown two good people and you assume that they're good, and you don't really get into who they are as a couple, which this book does very effectively. And so that's kind of going to be just this context for Galen as a character. I don't know if that really ties to pressure, but I think it kind of does, because he's always under this pressure to take what's in his mind and explain it in a particular way, and that's very difficult for him. And it's often difficult for him to kind of go from here to the world. And that's really where the character of Lyra comes in, and how she is able to make him this kind of functioning person, which again, like I said, we'll see throughout the book. Now, the life during wartime part comes from what's going on the planet itself. They're in this location called Vault, and Vault has this political coup. There was a person in charge, and now this other person's in charge, and basically what they decide is Count Dooku and the Separatists have probably come in and helped this coup happen. At the time this book came out, which the movie came out in late 2016, I can't remember what month Catalyst came out, but it came out in 2016. At the time, we had very little context for like what war was like for people not in the war. Clone Wars more so, like the Clone Wars a little bit more so than most because we've had the Clone Wars series, but to kind of see a neutral perspective without seeing the neutral perspective with a Jedi there, which is mostly what we got in Clone Wars. We never really got the neutral perspective in like alone. These are just scientists. They're not wanting to be a part of the war, and they're getting roped into the war because of Galen's big brain. So much of the book, or so much of this chapter, is them going after Galen because Galen is a super genius, and they want his brain because he's good with energy, and of course energy is important in wartime. And I like this as the opening setting of the book because it's not just, and then the Separatists wanted Galen. It was, well, now we're seeing this other planet, and we're seeing these other lives, and we're seeing how the Separatists are willing to just kind of go at and attack and take over a world, or at least pull strings for that world to be taken over, just to get to one person, really. I mean, yeah, another planet is another planet, for sure, but you know, that's a lot of work just to get one person, when you also could have just sent some assassins or something to maybe not kill him, but, you know, some bounty hunters to pick him up. Like, they're kind of scooping up this whole world and doing stuff with it. Now, throughout this chapter, we see that Lyra is pregnant. Of course, we know that's with Jyn Erso. Unless I missed it, I don't know that the chapter actually specifically spelled out that she was pregnant. There might have been a line in there that I missed because I knew what was going on. But it's an interesting thing for us as readers, because in theory, we know who Galen and Lyra are. Even if you were reading this novel before you saw Rogue One, which I did, I know that it's going to lead into Rogue One. I know that Galen and Jyn Erso are the parents of Jyn, most likely. And so I'm kind of already aware that the pregnancy is leading to the main character of a movie I'm going to see in a couple of months. So that was just kind of an interesting way to handle it. This kind of rare case where we can kind of know something about characters' exposition that the characters themselves aren't really spelling out. And then just the family dynamic in the novel in general I really liked. I love Galen and Lyra together. I already said that she kind of acts as like a translator and this person that kind of pulls him out of his journeys into science. But I also appreciate just the way they're described. You know, when he's worried about her on the run while she's pregnant, she's like, oh, who tore whose knee up on Corellia or whatever. And I like how when they came to the stop skiing that, you know, she came to an expert stop and he was less elegant. You know, you just get this idea of just, you can see who they are as a couple and how their relationship plays out. And that was really good. We get to see more about Galen as well because he's such a tactician. You know, when they're in the tunnels and they're running away with one droid, he comes up with the idea to, like, take the droid to this other part so it can turn into the snow speeder, which was all pretty crazy and very Star Wars. But Lyra's the one who's, like, following the plan and kind of speaking it so we, the reader, can understand what's going on. But even then, at the end, they still get caught in this trap because a trap was laid days ago. Now, that's an interesting thing, too. But it's just, Galen gets so worked up because he wasn't able to kind of see everything coming, and that gives you some insight into his character as well. The fact that this was set up so far in advance is intriguing because that means that they must have known this coup was coming, which is probably not that out there. But it shows you again the ramifications of what's going on politically, or at least it lays that groundwork, and that political groundwork is something we're going to explore in chapters to come. But that's actually what I have to say for today. I think I'm a little rusty at this, and it was just the first chapter, so forgive me if I left something out or we didn't really get to something yet. If you have any questions about the book itself or the author, James Luceno, let me know in the comments. If you have any thoughts about this chapter, elsewise, or just thoughts on how the series works in general. Always happy to hear from you guys. Please leave a comment. If you're wondering why I'm wearing this, it's still Christmas in July and quarantining, so I'm wearing a Yoda shirt. I just thought I'd add that there at the end. But as always, you can follow us on all the socials and find us in other places, and I'll talk to you guys next week.